Hello everyone, this is Yuqing speaking. Today we have another tutorial. In fact, this is not a tutorial, but an explanation on the QooCam V70 firmware update. This is a great firmware update, but many people don't understand what is the point. So today I would like to make this presentation for you to make an in-depth explanation on this firmware upgrade. And our topic today is seeing in the dark with QooCam. But it's not really seeing in the dark, but we almost seeing in the dark with QooCam. I'll give you some comments on the V17 firmware update. Let's get started. First, let's see what on earth has been updated in the firmware upgrade. There are three major features update. The first one is after connecting USB, enter UDisk mode by default. The second one is the DNG8 mode. The auto exposure time defaults up to 1 second. The preview frame rate will be dynamically adjusted with the exposure time. And the third one is solve some bugs. Many people are very familiar with the first one because most of you have ever tried to plug in the play with QooCam. But the second one is quite hard for the users to understand because this is a technically description. It's not very user friendly. So I will take a lot of time to take you through the second update. The third one, we don't have to care too much about this because there's a correction in the bugs. We don't have to know the bugs. So I will tell you a little more about the first one, and for most of this presentation, I will tell you the second one. The first one is after connecting USB, enter UDisk mode by default. And I make this table, the before and after comparison. So before this firmware upgrade, the QooCam, when you open this camera, it will enter the PCam mode, the PC cam mode. If you want to enter the UDisk mode, you have to open the camera. After it is loaded, double click on the button and use the cable plug and play on the computer. There are some problem with that. The first one is when you are copying the very big files, it's not very reliable. For example, on my Mac, when I copy the videos from the camera to my Mac, it's not very reliable. And once you disconnect the cable, the QooCam will automatically cancel the UDisk mode. And once you want to insert again, you have to double click again. So every time if you want to enter UDisk mode, you have to double click before plug into the Mac or the PC. But after this firmware upgrade, things become easier. And now QooCam, after the start, it will enter the UDisk mode. So technically speaking, is the MSDC, mass storage devices class. When you open this camera, it will be the UDisk mode by default. And now you can open the camera and plug and play directly to your computer. You can copy the data from this camera. And during the copy, especially the big files, now it is very reliable. I have tested quite a lot of data, around 30 gigabytes, even more, the read and the write. It's very reliable at this moment. And once you open the camera, you only open the camera and it's done. You don't have to double click every time to enter UDisk mode. So at this moment, after the V70 firmware upgrade, this camera could be doubled as a card reader. But the card reader is a USB 2.0 speed. So if you are using a USB 3.0 card reader to take the micro SD card outside the camera and put it inside a USB 3.0 card reader, I recommend you keep doing like this because the USB 3.0 reading the write speed is really faster than the USB 2.0. But if you are using the USB 2.0 card reader, you don't have to use it anymore because the camera itself is in fact has a built-in card reader for you, and every time you open the camera, you have the card reader in USB 2.0. So if you are still using the USB 2.0 card reader, you can throw it away at this moment. Okay, so second one is the second update is very difficult for some users to understand. So it will take a lot of time, take you through the behind the scenes. The second update is DNG8 mode. The auto export time defaults up to 1 second. The preview frame rate will be dynamically adjusted with the export time. This is in fact a major update. It's a huge update. You might not see, but once you are shooting in DNG8 mode, you will certainly experience its capabilities. So the second feature we divide into two parts. The first one is this one, and second one is the preview. So for the first one, the DNG8 mode, the auto export time defaults up to 1 second. What does it mean? Let's make another before and after comparison. So before this firmware, when you were shooting in automatic mode on the DNG8, the automatic mode cannot help you achieve the highest imaging quality, especially in low light, at night. But after this firmware upgrade, the automatic mode on the DNG8, now can help you achieve the highest imaging quality. So let's make it simple. Before and after is that after this upgrade, you can achieve the highest imaging quality automatically. But the truth is that behind the scenes, the exposure criteria has been changed. So let me explain the exposure criteria behind the scenes in detail in our next slide. Next one is let's show the automatically exposure criteria comparison. So before this firmware upgrade, the preview refresh rate is constant, the 30 frames per second, and there's an upper limit for the exposure time. The exposure limit was locked as 30 seconds, so you cannot go higher than slower than the 30 seconds. For example, if you want to take 1 second shot in automatic mode, it's impossible before, but now it's possible. So because we have a limitation of 30 seconds on the exposure time, when shooting in low light, the ISO will go straight up to 1,600, right? So you get the imaging quality will go down, the dynamic range, the signal noise ratio will go down dramatically. So that's because for the 30 seconds, there are some basic considerations. The first one is the QooCam team want to keep the refresh rate at 30 frames per second. It's fast, fluent, and responsive, right? And if we're shooting at 30 seconds, you are not very sensitive to handshake, but you make a huge sacrifice on the image quality. So after this upgrade, the preview refresh rate now it varies between the 30 frames per second to the 1 frame per second. It depends on your exposure time. So if your shutter speed is way faster than the 13 seconds, so the preview refresh rate will be 30 frames per second. But if you were shooting slower, like 1 second, now the refresh rate will be 1 FPS, which means the preview will change every second. And now the upper limit of the exposure time has changed to 1 second. And one thing that is very interesting is that in low light condition, now the QooCam camera will lock the ISO onto 100. So you always take at the lowest ISO in most of your situation, unless 1 second is not enough. If 1 second with ISO 100 is not good enough, the exposure criteria will help you go to the higher ISO at 200, 400, and 1016. 600, right? So for most of your time, now you have ISO 100, and with upper limitation of 1 second exposure time, which means that in most of your shooting situations, you will get the highest imaging quality because you have longer exposure time and the lower ISO. And to make it more vivid, I draw this chart for you. So as some explanations, so the blue line is the dash is the exposure curve, the dot is the exposure curve, the before and after. And the orange one, you can see this ISO curve before and after. You can see that it's the legend of this diagram. And before this V70 firmware upgrade, this is the criteria of the exposure time. It's like this. So when there's plenty of light, you have very low shutter speed, very fast shutter speed, until the light went down to this point. Now the 30th, that reached the limit of the 30th second, and after that, even if the light is darker, the situation is darker, the exposure time will never change. It will be locked to 30 seconds like this. And at the same time, be careful with that, is an ISO curve. At this point, the ISO will go straight up to 1600. So in this area, the imaging quality will be messed up. So this is the reality, the situation before this firmware upgrade. And after this upgrade, things have changed a lot. Now, yes, this is the tipping point before this firmware upgrade, which means that when the light is brighter than this point, you can always achieve the highest imaging quality. But once the light goes darker than this point, the imaging quality will be messed up automatically. And after this firmware upgrade, you can see that the exposure time curve has changed a lot. Now it's like this, right? The exposure time will go up to 1 second. And after that, if the 1 second is still not enough for this situation, then the ISO curve will go up until the 1600. So the tipping point after this firmware upgrade is there, right? It's here. So this is before and after. And you can see that now, after the firmware upgrade, once your situation in the light is brighter than the tipping point, you can always achieve the highest imaging quality because you can shoot in DNG8 mode with ISO 100, right? I have explained it before. So with ISO 100 and DNG8 shot, it works like a 1-inch sensor inside QooCam. So this is before. In this area, your QooCam will work like a 1-inch sensor. It's with the signal-to-noise ratio equivalent. And after this firmware upgrade, the capability of the QooCam has been extended to this area. So when you are shooting in dark at night, now the auto mode is more capable than ever before. Okay, so let's make some detailed comparison. The auto exposure criteria comparison before and after, right? So there's a limitation before the V70 firmware. It's that the 30 second multiplied by the ISO 1600. And after this is the 1 second multiplied ISO 1600, which means that in the night shooting, during the night, now you can go up 1 second compared to the 30 second, which means that it's now 30 more powerful than ever before. And you can see that the tipping point has been moved from this point to this point, which means that the tipping point, the imaging quality, will be 6x higher than ever before. It's like a square root of 30, right? You can see that the tipping point is the highest imaging quality you can get in auto mode. Once the tipping point has been moved to the darker area, which means that in this tipping point, that's the darkest situation you can get the highest imaging quality possible with the automatically exposure mode. So the night shooting has become 30x more powerful, and the tipping point imaging quality has become 6 more higher than ever before. That is the point of this firmware upgrade. And you are going to achieve higher imaging quality than ever before. But you have to see that there must be some compromise, and you have to make some sacrifice. You can't always get higher imaging quality without any compromise, right? You lose some possibilities, in fact, as me explain and give you some hints. You can see that after the firmware upgrade, because the exposure time limitation has been changed to 1 second. So for the handshake sensibilities, before this upgrade, the hand sensibility is very low because it's 30 seconds. You can easily achieve clear and sharp shots. But after that, the exposure limit has been changed to 1 second, which is not. It's very sensible to handshake. You cannot use the handheld if in super dark situation. And before this upgrade, it's very hard for you to get a blurry shot. But you know, when there's not plenty of light, although you get a clear shot, but it's not bright enough, so it makes no sense. And now it's easier to get blurry shot because the upper limit of exposure time now is 1 second. But the imaging quality has go way much better than ever before. And once you have keep your QooCam rocky stable, you can always achieve the highest imaging quality. If you are not very familiar with this criteria, in a dark situation, you can switch to manual mode and use a higher shutter speed in case of the handshake, right? You can always get the clear shot with the right parameter settings. But personally speaking, I highly recommend you always keep your QooCam rocky stable for the best possible shots. So now I have go through the first point. The DNG8 mode, the automatic exposure time defaults up to 1 second. I think now you have know what on earth is the meaning of behind these sentences. Now let's talk about the second one. The preview frame rate will be dynamically adjusted with the exposure time. What does it mean? We have explained a little about it before. Now let's make a frame rate comparison. So before this upgrade, you can always achieve a 30 frame per second preview in your app. But you can see that after the tipping point, you know, the situation become darker. There's not plenty of light. So you are still keep 30 frames per second refresh rate is not what you see is what you get, which means that the preview is not precisely the same as you get. So the live preview will make no sense. So after the tipping point, it's not what you see is what you get. And after this upgrade, before the tipping point, you can always be sure that you have a faster shutter speed than the 30 seconds. So you can always achieve 30 frames per second refresh rate. And after the tipping point, it gets darker and darker. Now your exposure time will be slower than the 30 seconds. So the real refresh rate of your preview now is like this. So T is exactly the exposure time you have. But by doing this, you finally achieve what you see is what you get. So the preview, the image on the preview is exactly what you will get after this shot. But you have to know that the lower frame rate means the higher latency, especially when you go up to 1 second, 1 second exposure time. Your preview will refresh only once every second. So this very low FPS means there's a higher latency, but you get a very precise preview result. So that is the compromise and the sacrifice. I hope you can understand by making this comparison before and after. So there is some sacrifice before and after, but at least we now have finally in the auto mode we have what you see, what you get. I think it's very important for the panoramic photographers, and it will help you. It will save you a lot of time because you don't have to shoot before, look at the folder and shoot again. You don't have to make trial and errors because you can see the result in real time. That is very important. So what if the situation becomes way too dark, which means you cannot even get a clear shot 1 second exposure time and with ISO 1300. If your situation is that dark, I highly recommend you pack your bag and go to sleep because you possibly will are going to the deep night. It's time for you to enjoy your nightlife. So it's not time for photography anymore. It's time for nightlife. Enjoy your life with your kids, with your wife, or you go to the bar to drink some beer. You never take that shot because it's way too dark. Yes, so just pack your bag, go to sleep, or go to the bar. Okay, so I think we have go through the first one, the second, the features. That after connecting to USB, enter the UDisc mode by default. I think now you have already understand, and you're gonna love this. I think. The second one is the technically speaking is very hard to understand, especially if you are not a technology. You don't have a technology background. But now I have made very good explanations, and I have even made a before and after comparison for you. So I think you're gonna love the second features, and you must have understand what on earth is happening behind this upgrade. And a third one, solve some bugs. Personally speaking, I don't know what on earth did they solve the bugs they solve, but I'm pretty sure that if you solve some bugs for the camera just have been better than before. So for the third one, you just make sure that just understand the camera is better than before, and that's it. You don't have to worry about the third upgrade. Okay, so what should you do right now is hit the download as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, and enjoy the upgrade. But this is not the end of this tutorial. I still want to talk more about this future potential of the QooCam camera, because this is a good camera and underestimated a good camera. Let's talk about the future potential of this QooCam. Okay, the first one is that after the V70 upgrade, now the camera is more sensible to handshake. So if you can give users a handshake indication based on the real-time IMU data, there's IMU inside the camera. If you can show the handshake indication for the users, so the user can try to avoid the handshake and thus get a much higher imaging quality without blurry. And that's another solution for this. Apart from the handshake indication, you can also leave a better criteria, the dynamic exposure criteria, which means you change the tipping point based on the IMU data, so that you can adapt to your user's handshake. But this is more difficult to realize than this feature. The second one is the QooCam app or the camera will provide real-time histogram during shooting. So the histogram, for the photographers, the histogram is really important, especially when you were shooting outside. The sun is so bright, it's way brighter than the cell phone screen. In this case, although the preview is so precise, but we cannot see the preview because the sun is just way too bright. But if we have the histogram, we can make judgment based only on the histogram. The histogram is very important for the outside shooting. I hope we can have real-time histogram during shooting, and this histogram is correspondent with the real-time panorama. And histogram is very important for the photographers. The third one is the stitching line indication. You know the QooCam camera has the best possible stitching result at this moment. But try to avoid the stitching line during shooting is very important. If we can put a stitching line indication in the live preview, it can help your users to get rid of the stitching line as good as possible. And you will have a better photo if you can treat the stitching line very well during shooting. Yes, and the third one, the fourth one is the same meaning. The camera orientation recommendation, it's the same as the stitching line indication. So in the third one, the stitching line indication, the users have to make judgment. But the fourth one is camera orientation recommendation is the camera could recommend where to put the stitching line so that you can change the camera orientation to the perfect angle and get the perfect shot. Next one is the stabilized real-time preview. You know, in this firmware, the preview is precisely exactly the result you will get, but it's not stabilized, which means if you are shooting with QooCam at different angles, the preview will look a little bit weird because the horizontal line is not horizontal. So you have to adapt yourself to this distorted rectangular panorama live preview, right? If you have a stabilized real-time preview, it will be much better. And as far as I know, the Insta360 and the Pilot Era, these two cameras, now they have the stabilized real-time preview, and it works great. It will take your shot easier. And the last one is, most people think that the DNG8 shot is too slow. In fact, DNG8 shot is very fast. It has a very advanced pipeline behind this shooting mode. And what if we can give the users a DNG8 shooting progress indicator to let user know what is happening behind the camera? Because in this mode, you are not taking a single shot. You are taking 8 DNG shots in a sequence. So that must be slower than a single shot. But that DNG8 is way much faster than the normal burst shot on the other cameras. So what about a DNG8 shooting progress indicator when you press the DNG8 the shutter button? And that will make the app more user-friendly, right? Okay, so that's all for today's tutorial. It's not very complicated. Just make some basic explanations on this V17 firmware upgrade. And I think it's very important for the users and for you to understand the shiny part of this firmware upgrade, especially the second one, the technical stuff, and how can you make the most, how can you take advantage of this firmware upgrade. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your time. If you have any questions, I will put this tutorial for this video on YouTube or Facebook. We can chat in the comments areas, and we can chat. We can talk more about this topic. I hope everybody can make the full potential of this camera and take the shots of your own life with the best possible quality. It must be good for your life. So thanks for your time. See you next time. Bye.